Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we will continue with the fifth part of the series. How does money and our global economic cycle work? It starts right after the intro. Stay tuned.
Insights for the informed investor.
Demography and the future of development. Demography has been mentioned repeatedly in the previous chapters. However, none of the previous chapters have dealt with demography itself. What demography is and how it will influence developments in the future will be discussed in this chapter. Demography is a word derived from the Greek. Demos stands for the people and graph for writing. In a figurative sense, it also stands for description. If you look at this pair of terms, it quickly becomes clear what the core topic of demography is: the description of the population. This description includes the development of the population structure. What do demographers do? Demographers study the changes in the current structure of society. Among other things, they try to find out what the current birth rates are. In addition, the age distribution is analyzed, and it is looked at how many people are emigrating or immigrating. Demographic research also examines how the proportion of women and men in a country is distributed. Another key point is that the age of the people is examined. In addition to age, the proportion of foreigners and the countries from which the respective residents immigrate are examined more closely. In addition to immigration, emigration is also analyzed. Specifically, this means the countries to which people emigrate from the respective country. These numerous changes, developments, and also trends for the future are summarized under the generic term demographic change. The population pyramid is a form of representation that can be used to show the gender distribution and age structure in a country. The origin of the term can be traced back to the fact that Germany was still shaped like a pyramid around half a century ago. What does that mean? The shape of a pyramid indicates that there were many births and only a few old people. In today's society, however, there are few young people and many old people. Birth rates are falling, while medical care and the age of the population continue to rise. In addition to the pyramid, there are three other shapes that characterize the age structure. The bell, for example, indicates that the number of births remains stable, and the structure of the actual population hardly changes. When the shape of an urn is formed, this indicates that births are decreasing. The decrease in births means that the population is shrinking. In the case of a leaf, this means that there are hardly any more births. As soon as an age structure has taken on the shape of a leaf, you should start to worry. In this case, the population may even disappear completely. This should be avoided at all costs. It should be noted that this age structure is not a 100% reflection of reality. Ultimately, it is a model that is used to make reality less tangible. For example, people can die as a result of epidemics or disasters. Just look at the past. Accordingly, when considering such models, you should always focus on the fact that they are not so simple. You should also bear in mind that unexpected events can change the whole reality. Just think of the wave of refugees, which has led to enormous population growth in Germany. The specialist areas of demography. The specialist areas of demography have already been briefly outlined in the last chapter. Population structure is a major subject area. This describes how certain groups are made up and the characteristics that distinguish them from one another. In addition to this, a distinction is made between spatial and natural population movements. Migration falls under spatial population movement, while birth falls under natural population movement. A key issue that also plays a decisive role in the economic spectrum is population development and distribution. In the future, an economic dilemma may well arise because pensions can no longer be covered. The analysis always focuses on one country. This allows a realistic picture to be created. Current social developments are always set in relation to past social developments. This ensures that developments in the country as a whole can be illustrated with reference to the past, and results can be drawn from this. In addition to the state as the object of study, there are also models that show the demographic development of an entire continent or the world. These models are, of course, much more comprehensive than models that only refer to one country. It should also be borne in mind that the models that refer to a country form the basis. This basis ensures that the various models of all countries in the world can be combined, and thus a model for the world can be created. Germany is characterized by a low birth rate, while Asian countries in particular, such as China or India, are characterized by a high birth rate. If you look at the whole spectrum, it quickly becomes clear that there are countries that complement each other well in terms of their birth rates, and also countries that do not complement each other well. You have now learned the basics of demography, which will now be considered in an economic context. Demography in Germany. What is the actual trend in Germany? Researchers say that the distribution of different age groups in Germany is more like a kebab skewer than a sensible demographic trend. Research also shows that there are many more women than men in old age. As a rule, women live longer than men, and secondly, this effect is reinforced by the fact that many men died in the Second World War. The current situation is that rising birth rates are fading again. However, the trend of shrinking births will not be so easy to stop. How can this problem be solved? More workers are needed to finance a comfortable retirement. To achieve this, the attractiveness of births should be increased by law. Another advantage would be that migrants in Germany would increase the number in the overall population. This, in turn, ensures that many people can continue to develop and that pensions can be financed for more people. These two possibilities exist to ensure that pensions can be financed in the future. Because one thing is certain, the current pension system is characterized by the fact that young people support the elderly. If this is no longer the case, the system can quickly collapse. In order to ensure reasonable support from young people, it is important that there is a relatively good proportion of young people compared to a proportion of old people. Demography in Europe. Now you have seen how the population figures in Germany are developing. That doesn't sound so rosy. But what is the trend in Europe? In Europe, numerous cities and regions are constantly reorganizing themselves. In concrete terms, this means that there are regions and cities that are constantly losing inhabitants. At the same time, however, there are also regions that are booming and always have an increasing number of inhabitants. For example, it can be said that development in eastern Germany is progressing rapidly. The infrastructure is being built up, and more people are moving to these cities than one might initially expect. However, this positive development in one area of Europe should not be misleading. Spain, for example, has a huge problem. Spain is currently experiencing a population decline. Of course, more and more refugees are coming to Spain, but some of them are not living in the country legally, so they cannot be counted as part of the population. Many Spaniards have emigrated to France or Germany as a result of the economic crisis of the past decade. However, there are also regions in Spain that are experiencing population growth. These regions include the cities of Barcelona, Bilbao, and Madrid. Researchers have found that these cities are experiencing positive population growth. One of the reasons for this is that people from Germany or France, for example, are moving to Madrid. Researchers in Europe also speak of a so-called Bacon Belt effect. This means that the surrounding areas of large cities in a country grow faster than the large cities themselves. At the same time, however, the population in rural regions is falling. This leads to the formation of large conurbations on the one hand, and the creation of open spaces that are simply not used on the other. In some cases, metropolitan areas and former villages are growing together. The effect of urbanization is being applied across the board. The development in Europe remains to be seen, but the current indications are that even more conurbations will form in the future. It may no longer be possible to serve these areas, which could result in a sharp drop in demand. Researchers are also assuming that this will have a major impact on economic development in a country or economic zone. If you've enjoyed the video so far, don't forget to like it. Subscribe to my channel and activate the bell to give the channel added value and support my channel for free. Demographics in the United States of America. The USA is characterized by a remarkable demographic diversity, which is the result of its long history of immigration and ethnic diversity. With around 331 million inhabitants, as of 2020, The United States is one of the most populous countries in the world. Although the rate of population growth is slowing, the population continues to increase, due in particular to migration and higher birth rates in certain ethnic groups. The ethnic composition of the USA is diverse and complex. Non-Hispanic whites make up around 60% of the population, while people of Hispanic or Latino origin account for around 18.5%, making them the largest and fastest-growing minority. African Americans make up around 13.4% of the population, Asians around 5.9%, and indigenous peoples around 1.3%. In addition, the number of people who identify as multiracial is rising steadily. The age structure of the USA shows that around 22.3% of the population is under 18 years old. About 61% are of working age between 18 and 64, and about 16.5% of the population is 65 or older, a number that is growing due to the aging baby boomer generation. More than 80% of Americans live in urban areas, with large metropolitan areas such as New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago being particularly populous. The U.S. is a major destination for immigrants from around the world, and about 13.7% of the population is foreign-born. There are also significant migration flows within the country, often from northern states to the south and west, driven by economic opportunity and a better quality of life. In terms of educational attainment, over 90% of Americans have a high school diploma, and about 34% have a bachelor's degree or higher. Economically, about 10.5% of the population lives below the poverty line, with poverty rates varying among different ethnic groups. Income inequality is relatively high compared to other industrialized countries. In terms of religion, around 65% of Americans identify as Christian, with Protestantism, Catholicism, and Evangelicalism being the largest denominations. Other religions, such as Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, are also represented. Approximately 26% of the population claim to be non-religious or atheist agnostic. These demographic characteristics of the USA are dynamic and constantly changing due to factors such as migration, birth rates, and social developments. Demography in China. China's demographic structure is characterized by an enormous population, impressive economic growth, and a series of political measures that have influenced population development. With a population of around 1.4 billion people as of 2020, China is the most populous country in the world. Population growth has slowed considerably in recent decades, mainly due to the decades-long one-child policy and the recent trend towards two- and three-child policies. China's ethnic composition is relatively homogeneous compared to many other countries. The Han Chinese make up about 91% of the population, making them the dominant ethnic group. However, there are 55 recognized ethnic minorities that make up about 9% of the population. The largest of these minorities include the Zhuang, Hui, Manchu, Uyghur, and Tibetans, who live in different regions of the country and have their own cultural and linguistic identities. The age structure of China shows that around 17% of the population is under 14 years old, while around 70% is of working age between 15 and 64. The proportion of the population aged 65 or over is around 13%. This aging population represents a growing challenge for the country's social system and economy. A remarkable proportion of the Chinese population lives in urban areas, with an urbanization rate of around 60%. Major cities such as Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen are important centers for business, culture, and politics, and attract millions of people. Rural-urban migration has led to rapid growth in the urban population in recent decades, as many people have moved from the countryside to the cities in search of better economic opportunities and living conditions. In terms of education, over 90% of the population has completed elementary school, and the literacy rate is over 95%. The number of people with higher education is steadily increasing, which contributes to a more qualified workforce. Economically, a significant proportion of the population lives in relative prosperity, but there are still significant income disparities between urban and rural areas, and between different regions of the country. The poverty rate has fallen dramatically in recent decades, but social inequalities persist. From a religious perspective, China is officially an atheist country and religious freedom is restricted. However, traditional Chinese religions such as Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism continue to have a significant cultural influence. There are also followers of Christianity and Islam in China, although religious activities are strictly regulated. These demographic characteristics of China are dynamic and subject to constant change due to political measures, economic developments, and social trends. Demography in India. India's demographic structure is characterized by a huge population, great ethnic and cultural diversity, and rapid economic growth. With a population of around 1.4 billion people, as of 2020, India is the second most populous country in the world and is expected to overtake China in the near future. Population growth is high, even if it has slowed somewhat in recent years. India's ethnic composition is extremely diverse. There are numerous ethnic groups and tribes in the country, with the largest groups being the Indo-Aryans and the Dravidians. India also has a significant number of indigenous peoples, the Adivasis, who live in different parts of the country. This ethnic diversity is reflected in the variety of languages and dialects spoken in India. The country has 22 officially recognized languages, including Hindi and English, the two official languages of the central government. India's age structure shows that around 27% of the population is younger than 14, which indicates a young population. Around 67% of the population is of working age between 15 and 64 years, while around 6% of the population is 65 years or older. This demographic distribution presents India with both challenges and opportunities, particularly in terms of education and employment. A significant proportion of India's population lives in rural areas, although the level of urbanization is steadily increasing. Approximately 35% of the population lives in urban areas, with metropolitan cities such as Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore being major economic and cultural centers. Urbanization is driven by rural-urban migration, as many people seek better job opportunities and living conditions in the cities. In terms of educational attainment, about 74% of the population has basic reading skills, and the literacy rate continues to increase. Participation in education has increased, especially among young people, with the government implementing various programs to promote education. Economically, many people in India live in relative prosperity, but there are still significant income disparities between urban and rural areas and between different regions of the country. Despite sustained economic growth and a declining poverty rate, social inequality remains a significant challenge. From a religious perspective, India is a multi-religious country with a wide variety of faiths. Hinduism is the dominant religion and is practiced by around 79% of the population. Islam is the second largest religion and is practiced by around 14% of the population. Other important religions are Christianity, Sikhism, Buddhism, and Jainism. This religious diversity is reflected in the cultural and social structure of the country. These demographic characteristics of India are dynamic and subject to constant change due to factors such as population growth, urbanization, economic developments, and social trends. Demography in the rest of the world. What are the demographic trends in the rest of the world? An analysis of the world's population has revealed the following. The population is getting older not only in Germany, but throughout the world. The birth rate continues to fall and life expectancy is increasing. The proportion of people over 65 in the world as a whole is expected to rise to 15.6% by 2050. In 2010, this figure was still 7.7%. In concrete terms, this means that the overall figure will double within 40 years. Poverty in developing countries is a major problem. With the current development in the world, it may not be possible to solve this problem completely. This is because population development and population growth vary from region to region. Problems such as poverty, the destruction of the environment, and violent conflicts are closely linked to the increase in population figures. Compared to the EU, Germany looks very old as birth rates are very low. When analyzing demographic trends around the world, it was found that only in Europe are population figures falling. 44% of all people in the world are under the age of 25. Population figures are rising rapidly in all continents except Europe. The Max Planck Institute has carried out an analysis in this regard. In their analysis, the researchers came to the conclusion that the economic crisis has reduced the birth rate many times over. Another study has shown that high unemployment in a country has a direct impact on the birth rate. In particular, Europeans under the age of 25 postpone the desire to have a child. However, a distinction should also be made here that family policy or job security can have a different relationship. This always depends on the country. Unemployment lowers the birth rate the most in Southern Europe. The outlook for economic development. Basically, the development of a population is always directly linked to economic development. For an economy to grow, you need low unemployment and at the same time, a good demographic distribution of the different population groups. As mentioned in the previous chapters, pensions in Germany, for example, are on the brink of collapse. But that is by no means all. It should also be mentioned that people in Germany will not be able to look after the elderly. The future leaves many questions unanswered. In order to really keep up economically, it will therefore be all the more important to build up several pillars of your own. Confidence in state aid is dwindling, as the future can no longer guarantee it.